This is an application I found recently online called AI Book Writer. I mean, it's quite interesting, offers an interesting model for creation of books. And there's a lot of debate, of course, about generative text and what it means for authorship and book writing. And I think this is really fascinating because it goes to the heart of quite a different model for producing books that most publishers out there won't be aware of and also of interest to authors. And there's also interesting how there's just different models now appearing that are AI assisted that join things together that you would never have anticipated. So in a way, I think this joins together book writing and ideas about game development, which was fascinating. So let's have a look at this. This is Adam Lawson. I'm just going to actually play this. You can find this on YouTube and just play it. And it's not very long, and just comment on a few things as we go.
A couple months ago, I released the AI Book Writer on GitHub. And since then, I keep getting asked time and time again when I'm updating it, what I'm doing with it. And I've been behind the scenes working on a brand new version of it. The current version really had three major flaws. The first is that it did a really poor job of consistently generating a book. The second is there was no human input along the way, so you couldn't actually change it if it went off the rails a little bit. But I do think it's still probably valid to have like a book like auto-generated from beginning to end. So I probably won't fully get rid of this version, but my new version has gone a different path. And I would say the third thing really is the context limit. One of the issues that I ran into consistently was being able to have enough output, being able to hold enough tokens in memory so that it could actually keep things consistently throughout the entire story. And part of that is because of my limitations with wanting to do this with local AI. All of the books that I've been generating recently have all been done with LM Studio. I've got full videos on how to set this up and use it. Highly recommend checking it out. But what I want to do today...
This is actually a really interesting application. If you've never come across LM Studio, it's pretty interesting. It runs on your desktop and it allows you to do local development with LLM that's on your computer, essentially. So it allows you to run models like Llama, DeepSeek, Mistral, and it's very useful.
Is introduce to you what I'm calling OpenTale. And OpenTale is an application that you run locally that walks you through basically creating a book. You go through step by step, and I'm going to go through that a little bit quick here. But note, some of these steps take a while, especially if you're using local AI. The first thing that I want to do is pick a model. In this case, I'm going to pick the Gemma 3 12B Instruct model. I do want to call out, I found that the Mistral models actually perform better for me. In fact, I think they have higher quality output, but that's my personal preference. And this is what you would do. You basically come through here. When you're done, you want to pull everything out of this book output folder that's automatically created for you. And then you would come into the application and just start down the path. So let's go ahead and start with the world setting. Now what we've got is a little bit of a chat setting here. So I'm going to go back and forth with it a little bit to kind of decide on the final world environment that we want. So now basically I just want a futuristic cyberpunk high technology environment. It should feature basically mechanical animals that are trying to take over the world.
So the first thing to note, of course, for anyone that's ever been involved in book production, you're probably looking at this thinking, this doesn't look very familiar. And that's, I think, the interesting part of it. New interfaces for making books that are AI assisted. I think too much of the conversation is just about, is Gen AI good enough? But not actually think about what a different model might look like or models might look like for actually creating a book with AI. I think it's a really interesting topic.
So anyway, this is my input here. Then it's going to have a conversation back with me. It's going to basically say, what kind of mechanical animal? It's going to ask questions about it. So what's the feeling of the world? So you can basically keep filling this in, and I'm going to do that a few times, and then I'll show you it generating the final world setting. So I'm going to add in, I want the animals to be dinosaurs. If you played the Horizon video game, this is pretty much basically ripping off of that a little. So I can give it that feedback. And what I like about this is now I can actually ideate a little bit more versus just having this fixed idea at the beginning. And then I can go as far as I want with it. And then when I finalize it, you'll actually get something that you can edit. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off finalize. We're just showing you that a little bit of back and forth here. Now, this will take a little bit of time, and I'm just going to look up LM Studio. So you can see here that it's actually generating the response properly here. And we're going to go ahead and watch this fill in. And the other cool thing is if you don't like something in your world setting, you can edit it and save it in the UI. So that was really my main objective here is I want to make it so that if you want to change something through this process, you can do that. Now, it's not as automatic as like clicking a button and going to bed and waking up the next morning and having a book generated. But I think this is more of how I actually want to actually create books.
And this is also interesting to me because in the first part of the video, he was talking about how he was trying to create an application where you could push a button and it would auto-gen a book for you. And he's coming to the realization that you need human involvement and curation to get something worthwhile out of it.
For example, this is a book that I had been working on for quite a while. I probably have like 30 pages written on it. This is an early version. I called it The Programmer. And I've thought about taking this idea and seeing how quickly I can actually build a book with my influence on it as I go through it. So anyway, this is the world setting. So you can see the geography and environment.
Just pausing it for a moment. I mean, it is amazing to hear someone say, they made a book and they're just wondering about what it would look like if it had their influence on it. It's just really a signal that we're in a completely different time.
I basically have fine-tuned these prompts to fill that out a certain way. So it tries to build locations for you. It tries to load in in this particular case, the mechanics, the technology. My prompts have been highly tuned to try to deliver these answers that are needed for the world setting. So look at it, culture and society, history and mythology, atmosphere and sensory details. You guys could play around with this a lot. If I didn't like something in here, I can basically come in, I can delete it, and then whenever I'm done, I just hit save. And now what happens when I hit save here, going back to the IDE, you can see it's basically saved in this world.txt. You can always come back in here and edit it as well. You're not fixed the way you were before on this one and done sort of flow.
And so, as I understand it, what he's doing is he has a world generator that puts together a world, and from that's the context for your book. Context being a really interesting word. And then that saves it as a kind of template that when he generates the chapters down the road, it's coming back to reference that to understand its context. This strategy is happening a lot in AI where the context window, the amount of content that it can process is limited. So you have to sort of move that window around to maintain consistency. And with large application code bases, it's also a bit of an issue. So generally speaking, you use the assistant to work on parts of the app. If you use an agent to roam all over the app, you get yourself in all sorts of trouble. So it's pretty fascinating. And the settings that he has in the world view as a kind of settings, as I understand it, is kind of similar to what Cursor and other AI IDEs have, where you have rules. You put down the rules of how you want the application developed. And I think it's similar to that strategy, having rules for the book, a worldview for the book.
Now, if I want to go to characters I do a little bit different, but you can see the world setting here. In this case, maybe what we're going to do is we're going to just say we want 6 characters. I don't actually know if I want to keep this section, to be honest, or if we should just we want it to be kind of back and forth on the number of characters. So I'm going to say, let's create 3 hero characters and 3 main villain characters. Sending that away. Now it has the context of the world setting. So this is where I was talking about the amount of context starts to get into the way, because one of the things that I've thought about is maybe there's a way I can summarize or make this smaller, but it's not that easy because you kind of need all of this context as you go through. Anyway.
And once again, this is interesting because in the development world, Primegen, one of the developers who I've referenced in an earlier video, my first video, he talks about this idea of tribal knowledge. And he says, what is tribal knowledge? It's like you could have a code base with a lot of documentation, and then you go to that documentation and you figure out how to solve a problem if you're a developer. And so what Primegen says is that tribal knowledge is when you see a problem in the software and you just know immediately what it is, right? You have this sort of like complete worldview. And I think this is nodding towards that problem as well. And this is really interesting. The discussions around developers at the moment, what I'm seeing online is they're really saying it's not just about writing text, right? It's not just about writing code. It's about much more than that. It's about the architecture. It's about understanding all of it. Being able to improve it or fix something, you have to have a complete worldview. And I think this is the same, right? So the role of the author here being someone who has a worldview. And when you hand that over to computers at this moment, to AI, you kind of have to hack that a little bit, because effectively you don't have enough context. It can't retain enough context to have a complete worldview all the time.
Here we go. We're generating some characters here. Here's Dr. Aria Healer. And again, once it's done, you can once you finalize it, you can tweak it. You can change the character's name. You can change their background. And I've fine-tuned these prompts to give you sort of the things that it's answering: their personality, their background, their motivation, their skills and abilities. Really interesting. I actually have gone through a couple full generated books in this way. And while I don't think AI is perfect at writing yet, I do think you can get a much better quality book because you're tweaking it as you go.
Well, I mean, once again, right, you can get a better quality book because of the human intervention. Now, I'm not standing up for all human authors as being the only entities that can write a really good book. I do believe we're going to get to a point where AI is writing really good books. But it's amazing to hear this is someone coming from the AI world and advocating that human intervention in a book will improve it, which is like, to a publisher, I think that's just a completely foreign point of view.
Oh, just to kind of go through here, here's our character profiles. We've got Alara Spark Vance. We've got Rise Silent Costas, so on. So we ended up with the Architect, Agent Cypress, and Victor Kane. I'm assuming those three are the bad people in this particular case. Apparently, the company that's creating the robotic dinosaurs is Neuronet Corp. So now I'm going to go ahead and finalize the character. What this will do is this will generate basically the character file with the individual character profiles. And then when I'm good with this, I can edit it in place here. I can save it. I can then go to the outline. All right, so now that the characters have ended up being generated, we can hit save here. The file is saved successfully at that point. I can go into my IDE and I can see my characters.txt. And again, you can edit these in place if you want, and it just makes it a lot easier. Now we're in the outline chat. I'm just going to say, first chapter, let's push the personality of the main protagonist. So now what it's doing is it's actually pushing some ideas to me. So I can actually go through and I can be like, I like this one, or I like that one, and kind of incorporate that into the outline overall. And then it actually gives me questions if I have any specific things that I want. So it asks me, what is Alara doing at the beginning of chapter 1? Now I could go through and fill out a lot of this stuff. I'm not going to do that here for the sake of time. But I'm going to say she is leaving her family and setting off on an adventure to stop Norocorp. And basically it's going to take that and incorporate that in. I will say, again, the model matters a lot here. Mistral, when I'm using Mistral, it does a really good job of incorporating things across a bigger context. I found the Gemma 12 billion parameter model to be not so good. And I found the output quantity, the amount of filling in the details, the chapter writing to be, not so great either. And I'll show you that here in a second. But for now, let's just go ahead and create our chapter outline and check out what it ends up creating. So our book outline's done. In this particular case, it generated 20 chapters. I found that you can kind of guide it in here, how many chapters you want. But I try to push it to about 20, but you can also change that by talking to the chat. One of the things I want to do is maintain this chat history too, instead of losing it when we end up creating the outline. Again, if you wanted to change the name of this, you can edit it right here in place. And then when you're done, you just go ahead and save changes, and we'll go back into here, and you'll see the outline in text form, and then you'll also see the outline in JSON form. Now, we get down to the meat of it. So we've got basically an outline we like, we got a world setting we like, we've got the characters we like. There's two different ways to kind of kick off chapter writing. One is I show you all the chapters broken down here, just to show you that matches the Rust Kissed Farewell, the Rust Kissed Farewell. So I'm going to go ahead and click Start Writing here. So this is what it looks like to write a chapter. You get the chapter outline. In this particular case, this is what's been generated, and that's going to be passed in for context. And you can also add in additional detail. This is less back and forth and more just adding additional context to it. So this is going to be kind of goofy. I'm just going to say, can we make her see a mechanical rabbit? I'm going to send that back, and it just basically says, thank you for the input, and I'll incorporate it. When we're ready, we're going to go ahead and generate the chapter. Now, again, this is going to take a little bit of time, so I'll cut back when this is done to show you what's happened here. So our chapter finished. You can see here we've got all of the chapter content here. And this seems like a reasonably nicely linked chapter. Just out of curiosity, see how many characters it is. Now, this is my ideal one, and I can get this with the Mistral 25.3 model pretty consistently, about 3,412 words, which is about the length of a chapter I want. Let's see how this one that we just generated with Gemma 12 is. Notice it's 1,417 words, kind of light on the chapter side. Not terrible, but definitely smaller than I would really want these chapters to be. So again, I'm doing that for speed right now, but the model matters a lot in this particular case. Now, the other thing is you can come in here and edit. You can change anything you want here. When you're done, just save your chapter here and pop it over into the IDE. You'll see chapter 1 text here. One of the things I need to do is rip out all these new lines. You look back at LM Studio, you could see a lot of new lines that are injected in. I've been able to clean that up in a lot of others. I need to do that in the chapter. It's not a big deal though. And also what I want to do is have a better format anyway. So I haven't had time to go through and clean up that text properly yet. But this does give you a great first pass on a chapter. Now you go to your next chapter, and it's going to actually have that outline. And then check this out. It shows you the previous chapters automatically includes the context from the previous chapter. So this one's going to be a little bit slower, but in some of the previous ones that I created in the automatic one, I didn't do a great job passing context forward and only what we need. And in this case, what I want to do is make sure it knows the previous chapter and then to be able to write this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and generate chapter. I'm not actually going to even put anything in the chapter development chat. And we're just going to go through and kick this off. While that's running, let me just close out by saying I'm super excited by this. You can check it out now by going to the AI Book Writer repository, which I'll have linked in the description below. But you do need to switch the branch to OpenTail. The feedback I'm looking for is, should this become the main version? Should I push this into main and overwrite the AutoGen version? I do think there is some value in having this automatic book writer, but it's not really the way I want it to work. I want to actually work with having feedback along the way. I want to be able to guide the characters' names, their background, their history. I want to be able to edit stuff in place and save it. And this is only scratching the surface of where I actually want this to go. There's so much improvements that I think we could actually do to make this better. And ultimately, I would love to have a way to where I could click a button, and over here on the right, it would just go through and generate the chapters one by one by one by one. And I can kick off all of this, right? So I don't have to go through and edit each chapter. I could have an agentic mode that fires it off as well. I think that chapter generated pretty great. Now, again, AI book writing in general, it leaves something to be desired, but I will say some models have gotten extraordinarily better at it. But I think the fact that we've got AI assisted writing with a model like this could mean we come up with better output. And I really love the idea of using all local models. LM Studio is great at getting up and running. And again, if you can run them, the Mistral model, the 2501 in particular, 2503, they do a better job at output. I will say the personality of Mistral 2501 is a little bit better.
I also find this very interesting. A lot of folks using prompting will, and myself included, take various tones with the AI, and it's unsure of whether it has an effect on the result. So I think it might be because humans are relatively superstitious beings, and we start subscribing all sorts of rationales. And I've seen a lot of videos recently where folks have said things like, I be kind to my AI. I think this is tied up to this issue of this personality, right? The personality of the AI. It's very interesting that we're starting to talk about it in this way. It's no longer a machine, but it's becoming an entity.
My opinion than the 25.3 one. But at the same time, I think they're both fine because you can tweak it, you can change it, you can guide it a little bit more now with this new model. So anyway, I'm hoping that you guys spam me with feedback. I would love for you to jump into the GitHub repository, star it, fork it, do whatever you need to do, and help me actually build this out to be something amazing. I've been asked so many times about what I'm doing with my AI book writer, and this is it. I've been reworking the entire thing. I'm calling it OpenTail because I just thought that was a cute little name for building books that are based on like AI. And of course, it's all open source. You're free to do whatever you want with it. And if you do happen to get anything that's actually really of high quality, I would love for you to share that with me. Jump into our Discord, which I'll also have linked in the description below. I would love to see it. Send me a Google Doc link or something to check it out. I can send you some of the ones I've created as well. But I think that about wraps it for this one. Thank you guys so much, and please leave your feedback in the comments below. Till next time, everyone. Out.
It's pretty interesting. Like, it doesn't look like your typical book production tool, right? Which generally looks like a word processor. He's developed a tool for producing books that starts from the position of, I'm going to get an AI to generate a book because that would be great. Then he's finding there's quality issues, so he's trying to figure out how he can curate the book a little more. So how he can create a worldview so the book becomes coherent within that. And then how he can shape the narrative in an iterative process. Really kind of developer-ish, right? Doing iterations on ideas and chaining them together. And then he's going back to the point where he's starting to think about how he could have more involvement in the book to improve it, that having a human involved is actually a really good thing. So he's kind of gone a full circle. What I really like is I think we're going to see a whole lot of different models for book production appear and people trying out all sorts of interfaces to try and get there and trying to figure out what book production really is. And this, when you look at this now, when you go through this process, when you do all the worldview kind of production, that feels to me like it's something that's more from the world of game production, right? You create a world and then you inhabit that. It feels like it's coming from that position, but it ends up in something that looks like a typical book production tool, although it's got prompting attached. He's kind of done this circle on interface paradigms as well, and he's come back to a much more regular kind of paradigm. And you can see, I think he's betting on the fact that they're going to get better, right? And so he's wrangling with these limits, the context limit, how he can make it coherent, how he can keep the story within a context and not lose that context, and how he can play a curatorial role but also intervene in the process so it just doesn't auto-gen. And he's acknowledging that his influence can improve the book and wondering what that means. He's kind of front-loaded the AI generation, right? So rather than having a text and you have an AI assistant, he's kind of assisting the AI to do a better text. So it's a little bit flipped, but really fascinating. And I think we're going to see a lot of people experimenting with this kind of stuff from all over the place, who are not necessarily from the world of the books and trying to figure out what a book is and how this all works and how could I make this something that other people could use to produce text that they want to read or they want to give other people to read. I don't know. I find this is opening up a whole lot of questions about authorship, obviously, and the role of AI in producing works. One of the most fascinating things here is the role of the author. And much like we've seen in the debates online around vibe coding, how far can it go? Do you need developers at all? I think many people are coming to a realization that if you're just going to vibe code your way to eternity, you're going to end up with a really hard to maintain and hard to change code base. I've been down this wormhole myself just to see what you can do. You can really do a lot. I'll be talking about this more. But you have to figure it out. You have to figure out how to work with the AI to make something sensible and a little bit anchored. It's very easy to go off the rails. And part of the problem is agents are kind of not contained. Agents will, if you give them free range to interpret your requests, they may interpret them quite different to how you intended it, and then go off and do all sorts of things in all different parts of the code base if we're talking about software development. And you've got no control over it. It just goes. And that can create havoc. So what I think is coming more into flavor right now is the realization from a developer point of view that assistants, as opposed to agents, are amazing. So you use the assistant in a integrated development environment to help you write code faster, to help you understand stuff, etc. And I think that something's true of that here, where he's coming to the realization is you could just sort of hand it over to the machine and it could generate a lot of stuff, but actually that stuff is not that good. So you need to work out how to bring the human into the process and tie down the AI and give it guardrails so that it operates within a given context. And he's also talking about the fact that he really struggles with the context. And that's also fascinating. So there's only a certain amount of text that a LLM can understand and process at once, right? The context window. So when you're generating a book, how much context do you give it each time it has to generate something new? If it's a large book, you can't give it all of the book as a context. So you need to move the context window around. And that may be different to how humans work when they write books. It might be that their worldview that they're creating a book from is emergent and they discover it as they go. But I think it might be true to say that they understand the whole worldview, or at least as much as they've worked out. And they can iterate forward from there and maintain the coherence. At least a good author can. And I think that's one of the major limitations for AI book writing, is that it can't really do that. And you have to figure out tricks and hacks to make it consistent and coherent. And that looks really parallel to me to what we've seen in software development, is that, you have to kind of work out how to work with it in order to make a reasonable outcome at this stage. At the same time, everybody is betting on it improving, right? So this is all ahead of us and we're yet to discover exactly where this is going. One of the other things I just want to really talk about very briefly is this video, if you want to check it out. This is pretty interesting. It's from Create With channel. This is really worth checking out because it kind of, for me, it goes back to the last video I made where these are people who are making software and selling software and creating a business, and they're not software developers. And there's a whole ecosystem opening up around this. So they're talking about how there are various services that are establishing that they can outsource complex parts of their application to effectively. So they build a small footprint, and their expertise is in building that using no-code environments, and then working out how they can connect to existing services. I think we're really going to see the value of the API rise, because AI is basically an entity that can help you do things on the computer in terms of generating text or maybe building some UIs or whatever. But when it has to sort of reach out and do more computationally intense stuff or very specific stuff, either you wait for the LLM organizations to add it to their model, like image generation, or you have to reach out to external services and integrate with them. So I think this is going to be very meaningful when it comes to APIs. APIs are going to become very valuable. And it's also true that agents, when you talk about agents coordinating things, what are they coordinating? Well, they're basically, you could say they're coordinating tasks, but they're also executing things either locally, if you're running something locally, or once again, they are executing tasks on external APIs. So I think this particular video is really interesting. They talk about all of this. They talk about some of the technologies that are available for inhabiting this ecosystem and how they are working out how to make money and their enthusiasm in this fast-moving landscape. Yeah, it's really, really worth checking out. Great. Thanks.